Hello and welcome back to Monday Night Mythbusters. I'm Dr. Carolyn George and this is Leslie Harrington.
Hi guys.
So tonight we are going to be talking about nutrition to prevent breast cancer. So this is Breast Cancer Prevention Awareness Month, or Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and so we thought this would be a good topic. So if anybody has got an experience with breast cancer themselves, or a family member, a close friend, whatever, give us a thumbs up. And if you don't, you can also give us a thumbs up because we're happy that you don't.
Hi, Marianne. So I think maybe give some people a few minutes to come on and re-ask that question, because it is going to be something I think many people have had their lives touched in one way or another. So yes, Diana says yes.
Oh, okay.
I'll say
thumbs
up.
up.
I have a couple people in the process right now, that I know that are fighting that battle.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the statistics are astounding. Even just the title of our, we put in the email that 1 in 8 people that are expected to have it before in their lifetime.
1 in 8 women.
Women.
Yeah.
Right.
For men, it's a little bit less common. It's about 1 in 100,000, I think. So less, but not uncommon. I mean, men still will get it. Yeah. So it's something that hits a lot of people because there's just so many people that are affected by it. And treatment nowadays, I guess we're probably finding it earlier, so we have more survivors. But it's still really, really tough. I mean, it's not one of these diseases that, some lymphomas and things you can have and then you're cured. If you're free for 5 years, you're done. But with breast cancer, it really isn't the same. It can recur at any time. So
and they know
serious.
What type of cell it is. 10 years later, something can pop up and they can really see the originating cell.
Right.
So it is something that even if you do go through that battle, that you want to watch these practices and healthy lifestyles ongoing to help you stay and maintain and keep your body, in that happy state.
Right.
We have so much influence on how we can set ourselves up for success and how to turn those genes on and turn those genes off. Cancer's just a beast of a topic to even dabble, because it's
and we're not even talking about nutrition in cancer. We're going to
yes,
talk about
totally
how to
different if you're in a treatment program.
Right, if you're in a treatment program, this is not what we're talking about, because that's much more in depth and you're really having to
very
rebuild
personalized
at that point. But this is just to try what are good healthy things so you can prevent having breast cancer. Just in general, male and female, right?
And you'll see there's going to be a lot of crossover in some of the conversations we talk with general healthy lifestyle and healthy living. There's going to be some things that you can almost target and that are actually anti-cancer, and they fight the potential for cancer. But there's also going to be things that are just going to be everyday lifestyle tips that everybody should consider. Significantly, because they are some way associated or correlated with different cases of cancer, or it's just something that will prevent you from other health illnesses.
Right, and that's really important to understand. So, I think the first thing we have to make sure people understand is that cancer is in us all of us. I have cancer, and you have, whether it's diagnosed or not. We've got little aberrant cells that are there that have lost the control mechanism that stops them from dying, and they keep growing. But our immune system is super good in general at getting out there and surveilling and finding these little aberrant cells and eating them up and spitting them out. So if you have a strong immune system, you're much less likely to get cancer that becomes an issue, right? So really doing everything you can to really boost that immune system is key. And so all the things we've ever talked about that boost your immune system are what you really want to do. So that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about tonight, but specifically with attention to breast cancer cells, which in general are very sensitive to hormones, and estrogen hormones in particular.
Yeah. And the other thing that we're probably going to highlight on that will encompass everything we're talking about is management of your inflammation, your systemic inflammation. Because as you know, inflammation is what over 80% of chronic disease has been linked to some form of inflammation. Right. Cancer is not an exception. So when you're talking about some of the things with building your immune system, inflammation is a very significant part. We see a lot of people that have higher inflammation have a poor immune system.
Right.
So sometimes you'll see that correlation there. Is causation? Not necessarily, but it's just important to know that some of the things that we're recommending are going to help you in other ways.
Right.
You know.
As in, always with functional medicine, we're talking upstream, right? We're not talking a supplement for a problem or a pill for a problem, but we're trying to do a few things upstream that has a huge, vast array of effects downstream. And that's the wonderful thing about addressing these core things, such as your diet, your exercise, your sleep. And again, we're going to dive into those a little bit deeper, but these are all really critical things to decrease inflammation, which then decreases your risk of having high sugars, which decreases your risk of your immune system failing, and then increasing your risk of cancer if it fails.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes by Mark Hyman is something with "Don't wait for the storm before you fix the roof." Right.
Yeah, the best time to repair your roof is
before
when the sky is clear.
Yeah. So especially living in Florida, it's a great rep for us, but it's like going into hurricane season and deciding you need to fix a leak in your roof. No, you want to have a solid structure so that when all of these storms and the season of chaos come at you, you're not vulnerable. You know, you have a nice solid foundation. So don't wait to implement some of these practices just because you're not feeling at risk or you haven't, you know, you don't know somebody that might have been touched by cancer. These are still healthy things to implement, assuming that they work for you. You know, some people don't do great with cruciferous vegetables, and we might talk about that.
Right.
You know, knowing that you would have a personalized effect by some of the foods. So you're going to know if something doesn't agree with you and it doesn't love you back, you know, not something that you're going to do, right?
So just saying hi to Madhu and Teresa and Marianne. And so as more people are kind of joining us, please thumbs up if you know anybody, yourself included, that has had breast cancer. Could be friends, family. Hey, Renee. Friends, family, neighbors, you know, relatives, whoever you might know that's touched you, right? It's not somebody that you don't really know, a newscaster or something with that's not close to you. But a lot of people already do know so many people that have had breast cancer. It's
incredible the amount.
Yeah. See, we're getting some thumbs up here.
Yeah.
So, and hey there, Nick. Men can get breast cancer too. So, and Maria just joined. So, thumbs up if you know of anybody that's close to you or yourself have been affected by this. So, what we're going to dive into first, I think we want to talk about is nutrition. So, well, that's actually the topic of tonight. But we want to talk about the specific foods that you can have that can really propagate cancers or ones that can diminish your risk of cancers. And so, again, these are ones that are going to boost your immune system. So, all your vegetables, any of them, trying to eat a variety of different colors or different types. Diversity is key. But some of the top ones are your berries, your blueberries. Very strong antioxidants in all of the berries. Blueberries, blackberries, strawberries, those are key. Going into the cruciferous vegetables, which are the broccoli, the cauliflower, the bok choy, the Brussels sprouts. They have a lot of antioxidants and things that help your liver to detoxify, to get rid of things that it doesn't want.
Yep.
So eating a diet that's very high in those kinds of foods is key.
Leafy greens, you'll always hear leafy greens from me. They're just so jam-packed, full of like bang for your buck.
Yeah, and the dark green ones.
Yeah, darker greens are
so
even
your
better.
head lettuce,
Yeah, like your iceberg.
Right, not going to really
You're not going to get
you.
the same as you would from like a spinach or a kale.
Yeah, right, so bringing those in. Then looking at other foods like your omega-3s, so fish, walnut, flax seeds, chia seeds. These are very anti-inflammatory as well. And you can get them in pretty much every meal. You can try to get some omegas in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Making sure you're getting some unrefined oils, so your healthy fats. Healthy fats are important. Your different types of teas actually have some anti-cancer properties. Some medicinal mushrooms have some anti-cancer properties. All very much contingent on quality. So organic is very important because, of course, you can deflate some of the effort you're making by eating stuff with GMOs and things that are going to kind of counteract the benefit of the vegetable if you're dealing with chemicals, you know. So which chemicals are actually something we probably will touch on a little bit, specifically BPA because of its role in some of the estrogens.
So let's touch on it now.
Yeah, so BPA, bisphenol A, you mostly are found, they used to think it was mostly water bottles, but in the past few years it's come up that they're in our store receipts.
Yep.
And we are handling those receipts constantly. And how often, you know, if you're not paying attention, are you throwing something in your mouth, you know, are you going home and eating something? You know, not to say whatever your hand washing thing is, make sure you're washing your hands. And some people don't even really take their receipts, right? So just have the person throw it right in the bag, or keep it all in one area at your house, you know. So go home, put it in the envelope, wash your hands.
And now they'll email them. You don't even have to do them.
So many people, it's just, I don't even take a receipt most of the time. You know, it's not the same as it used to be, you know, where if I know I'm at a grocery store or something, then I'm not going to return anything.
So BPA is in the receipts, it's in the lining of tin cans, it's of course in the water bottles, and the plastic water bottles. Anything that's squishy plastic has generally got BPA in it. They're becoming more aware of it though, because so many countries have outlawed it and banned it from their plastic, and now a lot of water bottles are replacing that with other chemicals, but in general these chemicals have not also been tested. And the big deal with BPA is that it acts as what's called an endocrine disruptor, meaning it acts like an estrogen. So if you put a frog in a bowl of water with BPA, it turns into a hermaphrodite, okay? Will turn from a male to a hermaphrodite, or a female to a hermaphrodite. It affects all sexual function in the right amounts. And if you think about the fact, you know, it seems like, okay, well, it's a small amount of BPA, how much is going to actually leach into the water? But our hormones there are also in those very small parts per billion and parts per trillion amount. That's how they make effects in our bodies. We don't need a lot
for it to.
Right, and so that BPA can go in there and stimulate your receptors for the estrogen and cause some problems. So try to stay away from, it's impossible to stay away from it completely, but if you can just try to minimize your exposure to those
just
plastic
the awareness
bottles,
and pay attention, you know. And this is one of the different things when it comes to toxins, the microwaving, especially plastics. If you're
do not microwave plastics.
No microwaving plastics. The plastic is often light and heat generated. So I see people that leave their bottles in their cars and I'm like, oh, don't drink that, you know. So the light actually, the water will actually take on the form of what it's enclosed in.
Right, so the heat moves the molecules around more, so they'll go from the plastic into the water more. And keep in mind that maybe you don't keep your water bottle in the heat in your car, but in the transport, in the truck coming over to the store, in the warehouse where it waited for a month or weeks before it was brought to the grocery store, that's probably not air conditioned, because you know they say the cost of air conditioning for fruits and vegetables that really require it, and they're not thinking about water as being one of those things. So
all tin cans, they are making them specifically now that they make them without, but same as the water bottles.
And I think the cardboard containers that they're using for some beans and things,
those are clean.
Those are clean, Those
you'll see that they're replacing cans. I see that a lot with the pumpkin and the beans and stuff. But the cans still are pretty. They're not, I don't think, as like
an interesting fact. For the most part, it's been removed. But you know, when you have sealants put on your teeth at the dentist, that used to be BPA. I don't think most dentists are still using BPA for that, but it gave a very protective seal to your teeth. However, gave a little extra estrogenic effect at the same time. So ask your dentist to make sure that the sealant, if you're doing it on yourself or your children, does not have BPA in it anymore.
Yeah, so to help offset some of that, again, that cruciferous vegetables, the stuff that's going to help detoxify you, there's the things that are going to help boost your immune system. So that might be extra vitamins, that might be the antioxidants you're getting from the berries, that might be certain supplements, you know, all of the things that set your body up for success, right? So you create kind of an environment where cancer doesn't want to live and thrive. The way that, you know, cancer doesn't survive in an oxygenated environment.
Right.
So the more blood flow you have, the healthier, your body is, the less inflammation.
Right.
You're going to have, you want to make an undesirable house for the cancer to want to, come into.
And so with that in mind, one of the things that cancer loves is sugar. So the way that we look for cancer in people that have hard to find cancers is we do a PET scan. And in a PET scan, you're given an intravenous with some sugary drink, and then they scan you because they know that the cells that are cancerous are going to absorb that sugary fluid much faster than all the cells around them. They just suck it in because they are energy soaks. They need a lot of energy because they're making new blood vessels and expanding and growing without any control. So when you're eating sweets, when you're eating starchy foods, you are feeding any cancer that might be in your body. So no, it's not possible to live without sugar. I mean, our blood is going to turn our food into blood sugar, but you don't want to have high amounts of it. You don't want to peak it. You don't want to give your body lots of sugar that can then be as a food source for this cancer.
Yeah, in the insulin resistance piece, so when you are eating that high sugar, often you get insulin resistance and your insulin's not able to function properly. So high insulin can also be kind of a...
Right, insulin is a growth factor. So anybody that's got insulin resistance generally has higher insulins, so that insulin is a growth factor, is trying to make things grow, right? Which we don't want to, right?
Especially fat cells, right?
We don't want fat cells to grow. We don't want cancer cells to grow. We're trying to keep away from that insulin. And so they have done numerous studies, and for example, diabetics who have poor control, who have very high insulins, or who have to take a lot of insulin, tend to have higher risks for certain cancers. Not all, but certain cancers. Yeah. So just eating that bowl of ice cream and then just shooting up with more insulin isn't really a great answer. It will solve the short-term problem of the high sugar, but it's not going to really lead you to good health down the road. So sugar, try to limit it. Okay, I know how yummy sweets are, but try to find those berries and all in balance, exactly.
And like we said, it's offsetting, right? So if you want to have that ice cream once a week, you're doing so many of these other things, right? It's not as going to be as effective because your body has a strong foundation.
Right, exactly. And if you're going to have that ice cream, maybe you throw in some almonds or some walnuts and you give it a little bit of a balance. Maybe you throw in some berries.
Anything you can do when you're combining your foods to prevent like that super high insulin or blood glucose spike is going to create more of a response from your insulin. So if you're eating fats and proteins combined with any high carbohydrate, it's going to help to kind of keep that spike from happening. It's going to help escort some of those sugars out of your body. So definitely if you're eating something, combine it with a little bit of fat or a little bit of protein or both.
Or both, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, no, that's always a good trick.
Yeah, that whole skim milk and fat-free milk is actually like a wolf in sheep's clothing. Yeah. It actually makes it worse to drink skim milk because now you're drinking this there's a lot of sugar, 12 grams of sugar in most 8-ounce cups of milk. Now you're creating an insulin response with nothing to bind to it and help it move through your blood.
No fat to help balance it, yeah. So if anybody knows me, they know I'm not a big fan of anything that's labeled low fat, right? You want to enjoy fat, but you want the healthy fat.
There's almost always more sugar in the low fat.
Always,
yeah.
Always,
so if
always,
you see like put in red and you're looking at the other, you're going to see more fat, but you're also going to see
more sugar.
More sugar in the low fat. There's going to be more sugar and usually other type of preservative type things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's not a good place to be.
We went through a phase in society where it was all fat-free, sugar-free, all that, and we won't get into the whole study that was botched by that Harvard researcher.
Yeah.
But the attention was meant to be taken off of fat and put onto sugar, and so it's really important that we understand that sugar is still the culprit here, and especially when it comes to cancer. If you did nothing but just pull out sugar, I mean, I don't know the statistic on how much you're lowering your risk, but it would be big. It would be significant.
Yeah. And we have to think too about how much sugar we eat. I mean, the current estimate is about 150 pounds a year per person. So that's now, whereas 100 years ago, the estimate was less than a cup. It was just very, very small because all they were getting that was sugary was the fruit.
Yeah.
That was really all they had exposure to. So sugar, big topic. Just try to diminish it. I know it's very hard to cut it out completely, but try to decrease it and then balance it with the berries, the nuts, the seeds, other things that make it good. Okay?
Yep.
So then the other thing that we wanted
Vitamin
to talk
D.
Vitamin D, yes. So vitamin D is one of my big bugaboos. I really try to make sure people increase their vitamin D to not only just a normal level, but an optimal level. And normal is between 30 and 100, and optimal, generally in functional medicine, we kind of feel that around 60 to 70 is really much more optimal. And why is vitamin D a big deal? Well, because it is kind of the backbone of our hormones, but even more than that, we have found in many studies, looking at population studies, people that have low vitamin D are much more likely to get certain cancers, colon cancer, and I believe breast cancer. There's a couple others. So we don't know why exactly, other than we see that it has importance in our immune system, but it's definitely important in terms of getting your vitamin D level up. And we can see that it really helps the immune system, that it helps, actually, your vitamin D helps your cortisol, it helps your testosterone, your estrogen, which you might think would make you at higher risk if it helps to build those things, but it really doesn't. I think it modulates and gives balance.
Yeah, and you think of vitamin D, most of society, there's a very large percentage of society that's deficient in vitamin D.
Yeah.
And that's partly because of the sun exposure. It's the fact that we're very into sunscreen, which isn't a bad thing. But to be able to get it purely from the sun and get your body to convert it properly is not always that it's working in every individual.
Most
different
of us
skin
don't
tones.
have a few hours to spend every day just sitting outside soaking up the sun, you know.
Yeah.
We've got things to do. So they have not proven, however, that taking the vitamin D supplement is equivalent to getting it from the sun. Those studies are still underway, and they're going to take many years to really show that if there is an improvement with that. But in the meantime, it's easy. Hedge your bets. It's not terribly expensive. There's very low risk. If you get it super high, your worry might be a kidney stone, but most people don't get them, and you're trying to avoid that over 100 level.
Yeah, and know too that just you might have skin, you might be in the sun a lot, doesn't mean you're adequate or optimal in your vitamin D.
Right. So you can have vitamin D receptors that aren't very sensitive. There's a lot of reasons you may be using a lot of it, so it should always be measured. Always ask your doctor to measure that.
Yeah, that's one that you want to kind of know where you stand.
Yeah,
on there.
you definitely want to know where you stand.
And a lot of doctors are doing vitamin D levels a little more than they used to.
Mm-hmm.
So you see that kind of on more of the standards.
I think it's getting around, and you'll see psychiatrists, almost all of them are now doing vitamin D levels because it's it affects mood so much. If your vitamin D is low, you're much more likely to be depressed and anxious.
Yeah. Simple, one of those simple rule outs, right?
Right.
So vitamin D, and then we had also on our notes that we were going to share, what's the number one? I would say that we're all in agreement that sugar is that.
Yes, yes, okay.
The foods, we talked about some foods. We were going to touch a little bit on fasting and how that can potentially be beneficial. There are some studies that support fasting for many different types of disease states. They're a little bit on the newer side, but if you think of it just from a simple concept of freeing up some of the energy for your body to do some of the other things that it needs to do to detox or things like that, there is a fine line. There's a point where it transitions over to your body actually reacting in a way to fasting in a negative way. So make sure that you're being really careful when you're participating in some of these there's a lot of stuff on the internet about intermittent fasting and 3-day fast and this, that should be done with supervision.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't suggest anyone go and just maybe, do the 12-hour, 15, that type of thing. But in general, it's something that you want to really be working with someone in particular. Can it be a strategy to support cancer prevention? Sure. Yeah.
So what fasting does when you're not eating, obviously, as Leslie said, you're not using that energy that's would otherwise be used digesting your food, but your immune system, when it's not getting food, when it's not being fed tons and tons of nutrients, it's going, okay, who's the weak guy around here? Let's get rid of him. We need to clean house. So it's something called autophagy, which means that we're kind of start to self-digest. We take out the weakest cells, and that's a way of clearing out a lot of cancers. There is a lot of very compelling research looking at not only intermittent fasting, but short-term fasting of 3 or 4 or 5 days, fasting mimicking diets. There's some really cool stuff that's going on right now in terms of looking at the research with that. But again, do it with your doctor. If you go really over 5 days, probably more negative than positive in terms of rewards, because your body needs to have those nutrients to heal, and you need for your immune system to be able to go out and do that surveillance. So it needs to have fuel to do that and antioxidants to fix things. But there's some cool stuff. So keep your eyes and ears open in the pipeline for that.
So Rosandy asked for
any type
for
of vitamin D.
D2 or D3 or D. I see D2 a lot and D3 I get asked a lot about.
So
D3.
D2 is what's the in the most pharmaceutical Ds, although there is a long-acting one that's out now that's not a D2. But D3 is what I usually recommend. It's more advanced in terms of how our body can use it. And I usually suggest taking it with vitamin K, because there's a lot of good evidence that shows that vitamin K with D helps your body to use the calcium that you then bring in from your GI tract, from your food. It helps it to go into your bones rather than calcifying your blood vessels, which we don't want it to do.
And a lot of the supplements you see out there have a K component now.
Right.
It's kind of like turmeric and black pepper. Like
Right.
Everybody's combining them.
And if you're on Coumadin or warfarin, then you want to avoid that, because that will undo your blood thinning effects. But if you're on Eliquis or some of those other newer ones, you're okay. So just check with your doctor with whatever medicines you're on to make sure the vitamin K, if you're on any kind of blood thinner, to check with your doctor.
Yeah. And I was going to go off topic when you were talking about like why some of the doctors don't understand that D3 versus calcium. They see bone density and they immediately like take calcium,
Right.
when that actually can cause other issues with the clogging versus integrating the K,
Right.
which allows it to go to the right areas.
So if you take too much calcium, it will go into your blood vessels. That's, it's just kind of an overflow. You really want it to go into your bones. So the K kind of escorts that calcium into your bones a little bit better. And there's no big studies, but I think there are some smaller studies showing that it also helps to prevent the if you get kidney stones, to help prevent getting kidney stones from taking the higher doses of vitamin C or vitamin D.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Always something new.
Are men at risk? So we did talk about the risk of men for breast cancer in particular.
Yeah.
1 in 100,000, you thought?
About 1 in 100,000. And their major risk is if they're overweight, because our fat tissue converts testosterone into estrogen. And so if they're overweight, then they've got tissue that's taking their testosterone, making estrogen, and it's the estrogen that's then stimulating the growth of the breast cancers. And that's true in women as well. So overweight puts you at higher risk for breast cancer. Eating actually a very high fat diet, but they're talking animal fat, not plant fats. So the high fat diet is a risk factor for breast cancer, and that bumps your risk up. So avocados, nuts, seeds, olives, coconut oil, those things are fine. The other thing to touch base on in terms of what we ingest is alcohol. So there's been a lot of talk about how a couple glasses of red wine a night are good for you with your heart, although that's coming into question now too. But we've always known that any amount of alcohol increases your risk for all forms of cancer, but particularly breast cancer. So if you have a high risk of that, try to avoid or just don't drink. And minimize your amount of alcohol in your diet. And again, that's probably increasing the toxins that your liver has to detoxify, and it can't then detoxify the estrogens that are around. There's probably some competition. And of course, inflammation. Alcohol creates, sugar. Okay, going back to sugar.
Sugar, yeah. And when we talk about sugar, we're not just talking about scooping it in your coffee. We're talking about your starchy carbs, your breads, anything that are going to convert to sugar in your blood. Right. And as far as alcohol, anything that you're going to put on your liver and tax your liver and take that energy away from being able to do something that it's naturally more equipped to do.
Yeah.
it is gonna put you at more risk.
Yeah.
So definitely the alcohol. We had a conversation about soy prior to, and I thought we'd actually talked about it, but that was just you and I. So really quick, if you want to touch on soy, our time's almost up.
So we'll touch on soy. So people often ask me, should I avoid soy if I've got a family risk of breast cancer, or I want to minimize my risk? And my answer is that we don't completely know yet. Soy has gotten a very bad rap, and maybe deservedly so, but I think there is some newer evidence showing that really soy, there's two estrogen receptors that we have in our bodies, and soy actually binds to one and inactivates it. So it really doesn't stimulate the one that causes that's the receptor that is responsible for the increase in breast cancer. So it binds to that one and inactivates it versus activating it, which is what a lot of the other things that are soy or estrogen mimickers like the BPA and stuff are going to bind and activate it, increase the activity of it. So I also turn to population studies, and if you look at the countries that have the least incidence of breast cancer, it's the countries that eat the least or that eat the most soy. And so I don't think it's a really clear-cut thing. I think they're not eating soy very processed, so I think you want to avoid the processed components of it. So edamame is a soybean, then there's tempeh and miso, and then you've got the very processed tofu. So the least processed of these foods, the better, as with everything else that we eat that's processed, right?
Yeah, I think the key there is it is the highest GMO crop. So the biggest thing there is sourcing. How are you going to find a good quality, clean source of soy? Making sure it's non-GMO, making sure it's
and
minimally
most of what
processed.
you're going to get in the restaurants is going to be GMO soy.
Yeah, it's very hard to find. I think probably really good soy.
It's super easy to find in the grocery store. It's
in the good grocery stores. Yeah,
right. Publix has it. I mean, they just say non-GMO. But at the grocery or at the restaurants, they're buying it in bulk, and I'm confident they probably are not buying the non-GMO. So. Again, if you're cooking for yourself, non-GMO, I don't think it's a big issue, unless you have if you notice that you have a specific aversion to it or it causes gas or bloating. But I think we're going to have some more studies that look at that really in depth. So if you like soy, cook it yourself. If not, then just avoid it. That's okay.
Guys, do you have any questions for us? We kind of threw a lot of random things at you and didn't get super deep into any of them. So if you have any questions, like to go deeper on any one or some that we maybe didn't touch on, just shoot a note. We'll get back to you either tonight or tomorrow.
Yeah. And thank you, Alain and Sally and everybody else that joined us. Thank you so much. We appreciate you paying attention. And if you feel that this has been helpful, or you think any friends or family might be interested, please feel free to share it. If you like us on Facebook and like us on YouTube or follow us on YouTube, we also have an Instagram link too. So any place so that other people can benefit from this information, we really appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely. We come here weekly because we love it, but we're trying to get information out that might not be as commonplace. You guys have been hearing it for a while, and if not, are already participating in functional medicine, but there's a lot of people that don't know this information, and it's surprising. Sometimes I'll say something like, "Well," and they'll look at me funny, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, they didn't know that." And people don't know. They don't know.
Right. So share away, talk to them. This is the best way to get that information out there. Have conversations. The science is always evolving, so things do change. They told me in medical school that 50% of what they were teaching me was going to be proven wrong. And they're right, but we don't know what 50%. So just always have that science mind, always be questioning, always, look deeper. Try to...
Yeah, nothing's forever.
Yeah, dive a little deeper. And on that kind of a topic, next week we are going to be speaking about CBD oil.
Yes.
And some of the benefits of CBD oil.
No one was talking about this 10 years ago.
Yeah, nobody was talking about this.
It was like being stuffed.
Yeah. It was like, no, we can't talk about it.
Yeah.
So please tune in next week, and we will fill you in on what we know about CBD oil. Okay? Until then, have a fabulous week.
Have a great week, guys. Thank you.